Michael Hurwitz builds furniture in a long and narrow street-level shop in the oldest part of Philadelphia, where he usually works with one or two assistants. Hurwitz renovated the 19th century former factory building and lives on the upper floors with his Japanese-born wife, who is a sculptor, and their 11-year-old daughter. Japan has figured prominently in his work as well as in his personal life. His many trips there have provided inspiration for a wide range of designs. Hurwitz's furniture combines function with lyricism, and it has a refined expressiveness and an elegance that's unmatched in contemporary furniture. That poetic sensibility, though, is tied to an uncompromising craftsmanship, and his pieces often find their expression by exploring materials and innovative structures. This past summer, he picked a dozen or so pieces he's made over the last 30 years and sat down to talk about them.
I discovered the milk paint when I was doing a commission. I think I was still in college, and that paint had a quality that I loved and hadn't seen before. The way it reacted, especially with mahogany, result is a much darker, deeper brown. It's a chemical reaction in the wood, so if you're sanding through the milk paint before you get down into virgin mahogany color, you've got a pretty deep, dark brown that looks authentically ancient. I built that, I think, in 86 or 87. I visited Japan, went to the Kiyomizu-dera temple in Kyoto, and was struck with this sort of physical sensation of walking up this mountain through a pavilion and then realizing that you were on this platform overlooking the canopy of trees below you, and the physical sensation of being caught by surprise to find yourself in that relationship to the ground came out in the piece. The decision to accentuate the natural grain of the bird's eye maple, that was probably a result of looking at wood in the context of a 1,000-year-old temple that had been touched by millions of hands. I should say, though, that it was preceded by the piece I did in the Dominican Republic, the chest on trees. The idea of a piece having the capacity to be not just a record of a time and a place, but sort of a portrait of time and place. Boston MFA had an exhibition, New American Furniture. Ned Cook invited several furniture makers to come look at their collection of furniture and asked us to respond to it with a piece of our own design. And the piece that I was drawn to was the Samuel Gregg elastic chair. And that stuck out as being truly unique. It really stood out in a room as like a sort of a maverick design. And also just had elements of style that I'm naturally attracted to, sort of sinuous and light and open and airy. And so that evolved into that rocking chaise. That was a very challenging piece to make because of all the demands of for the chair to rock well, for it to look inviting without somebody sitting in it, to be comfortable when you were sitting in it, to be able to get in and out of it without a shipwreck. Teacup desk I made when I came back from Japan in 92. I returned to Philadelphia, and I had sort of like reverse culture shock after having been in Kyoto for 6 months. And I came back here, and it seemed like just especially hostile sort of environment. That was part of the thinking that went into the idea of the teacup desk taking the shape that it did, that it was sort of like offering a cup of tea. And it also was growing out of the phenomenon known as the power desk. And so this is sort of the antithesis of that. Thinking about writing made me envision a more productive environment for writing, which I imagine is kind of an enclosed garden. The plants were ivy. They're growing in a stainless steel bin. And it's made of teak because I'm thinking spraying the ivy with water and being able to wipe down the marble. That was our first marble mosaic piece. So there was a lot to learn about how how that could be done and keep the weight down, try to make the marble as thin as possible. So that led to a bunch of mosaic work. The mosaic stuff was super time intensive, hundreds of little pieces that have to be handled dozens of times. I went back to Japan this time to collaborate with the lacquer master, Yuji Kubo. And while I was there, he introduced me to a few other craftsmen. This one was Kozo Takeda, and he was a weaver. I just love the tradition of the erratic woven baskets, which were typically split bamboo, woven like a bird's nest is woven. I dropped it off at his studio with just the skeleton of the shelves, the backbone, and the lip, and I asked if he could do it. He took a long haul on a cigarette, like half of it, the drag that would never end. About 2 minutes later, he exhaled and he said, "It's not impossible." And that was it. That was our discussion of how it would be done. Wenge plant stands. I wanted to go as far as I could with the strength to weight ratio thing. And so I wanted to make a form that was sort of like had the presence of like gauze or like an apparition. These we built by turning the solid form on the lathe out of blocked up solid wood and then laminating right over that parabola. So we had a 3-foot tall parabolic form with the lines drawn on it, and we would laminate this little diagonal sprig across that form. Peabody Essex Museum, Chinese pieces, which we made 2 of them, a pair for the same exhibition. And again, Ned Cook was the curator of this exhibition, which was called Inspired by China. I like the idea of creating a composition that was based on the play between solid and open forms. In this case, I was thinking of those crazy quilts made by untrained people out in the country from scraps. I wanted to capture that same kind of quality that I like in folk art. The other piece, I guess I was thinking about the story of the Silk Road trade route and how exciting that must have been to see, frankincense and myrrh coming from another corner of the world. That led into the idea of it being covered in silk. This is the collector's cabinet, also covered in silk and carved from Zelkova. I'd seen in lacquering books a particular medicine chest from Japan, and it was just however many box drawer fronts, let's call it 4.5 inches square. They were identical, but the image on the front changed with different sort of stylized flower types or leaf types. And I just love that combination of the regularity of that increment, but then the slight variation within that. Getting back to the idea of lightweight and strong, addressing that challenge. So I wanted to do a piece that made use of that kind of construction, but make it more functional as a tabletop. And so that led to the idea of infilling the screen with the resin. And the resin also stabilizes all the joinery, which means you can make everything thinner and lighter. That was a torturous project to get through, but a lot of that was learning about different kinds of resins and developing a system for this lattice. And I thought next time I do lattice, it's going to be a bigger increment. On this bigger scale, I knew that, we just wanted to take what we learned, but leave the resin out of it. Nice thing about that was being able to shape the cross-section. You can see in the detail how the shadow helps to give this some identity. And I think that's it.